Hey, what's going on? My name's Robert, and you are watching Southpaw AutoWorks. This video is all about the inspection of the new process 435 manual transmission. We previously dedicated a video to the teardown of said unit. If you missed it, no worries, you can find a shortcut to that video in the video description down below. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
So inspection on our 4-speed here. As far as the case goes, not a whole lot to go over. The obvious stuff is bolt hole threads and stuff like that, making sure none of the bearings had done any damage, spinning inside the case, creating a problem where that bearing's going to be too loose in the pocket. Usually not a problem on these things. There is a front bearing hidden behind this little cover right here, and that's for the countershaft support in the front. And what we would do there is come in from a punch, from the back with a long punch, knock that out through the front of the case. That would be part of your normal rebuild or overhaul kit. So you simply punch that out and replace it. Robert showed you a close-up of the magnet. That's one thing that can be kind of a pain to clean because of being down in the bottom of the case and also being kind of locked in place there, if you will. So clean up, checking threads, simple stuff on that, and then we'll look at everything else. Looking at the rest of the trans, the counter gear itself, obviously we're looking for any chip teeth here, rust. You're always going to see, it seems like on most of these, a little bit of surface rust on the teeth itself. As long as it's not deep enough maybe to catch your pick or your pocket screwdriver in, you're probably good. We want to make sure our bearing surfaces here are smooth, not pitted too bad, obviously there. Same thing on the other end for that counter gear. It's normal to see wear here once again because of contact between that reverse idler and that first gear. Those are in mesh here, and obviously, like I said, not synchroed. So if gear speed is not matched, you will get some grind, you'll get some wear on those. Pretty much what I would consider normal wear and tear on that. I would not be worried about that too much. Most of this just appears to be surface rust and oil and grease and stuff, so I think we're fine there. The first gear, I think we mentioned before, wear on those teeth, also going to be pretty much normal. Would also look at the groove here where our shift fork rides. If I could show you that. That guy's going to ride down in there on those little plastic inserts. So obviously if the inserts were missing, in our case I think somebody had just dropped them after inspection. If they're missing, they're worn down so bad, then of course this shift fork itself is going to make contact and make wear in that groove. If it's excessive, then we'd want to replace the gear itself.
Are you in need of an overhaul kit, hard parts, and or tools for your upcoming rebuild? Be sure and check out the resources section in the video description down below.
We'll look at the input shaft here. Bearing, of course, will get replaced. I am concerned of this surface right here. That's where our front or input seal rides, and that has some real nasty rust and pitting on it, okay? That's going to make for a very poor seal surface. We've also got some serious rust on the pilot area. That's where it rides in the pilot bushing or bearing in the end of the crankshaft. We could probably clean that up, polish it up, stick it in the lathe, use some sandpaper, light sandpaper, crocus or emery cloth. But what concerns me is this is not going to clean up here. I'm going to recommend on this one we'd have to replace that input or fourth gear shaft itself. Rest of the gears, same thing. We're just looking for major chips in the teeth itself, major rust, and we'll have a little bit of wear here where the synchro engages the gear itself. Also, that starts out as a tapered surface, so a little bit of wear in that area is not bad as long as they're not chipped off. Same for the rest of the gears here, okay? Same thing, we've got the little synchro teeth down in here. There's some that are chipped a little bit, but in most cases, these would probably work just fine again. And of course, on the inside of the gears, any of these journal surfaces or bearing surfaces where they ride on the shaft, we would want to inspect to make sure those are not scored or pitted. All right. They're all going to have a little bit of play on the shaft itself, a little bit of movement, but we don't want to see any major rocking back and forth on the shaft itself. Move it away from the surface it sets against and then try and rock it back and forth. So you can see it rocks just slight amount. That's not a big deal. That's pretty much normal on these. Same thing on this guy. Check and make sure he doesn't rock and roll. Doesn't sound like a door knocker on there back and forth. So all of those, I think we can pass. Of course, as I mentioned before, we'd inspect the synchros themselves. This is a friction surface. This needs to feel, as they used to say, like a cat's tongue, okay? Has to have some grip, if you will, to it, so that when this guy, caller, comes over and tries to catch him, he catches under. He didn't slip or slide across there. He grabs a hold of him. Same thing over here. Same thing. I believe, not positive, I think these are still available. These are not your typical synchro. They pretty much did away with these and went to a conventional synchro. We'll show you. And I'm not sure, but I think this surface is still available from the aftermarket, but we'd have to check on that. Sometimes you have to buy the whole damn assembly. Reverse idler, we mentioned before, same thing, wearing the teeth. I don't see any broken teeth, chips, nothing major right off there. And that has a bushing inside of it, and we would check fit on that idler shaft that supports it. A little bit of rock and roll in there, but not a big thing. None of these old standards, they're pretty forgiving as far as clearances and so forth. The bearing, I think I mentioned in the case, the thrust washers for our counter shaft or counter gear, these are pretty well scored up. Most of your overhaul kits will give those to you in the kit itself, or you can buy them with the small parts kit. Bearings, same thing. Usually they're going to give you these cage needle bearings in the overhaul kit. And I think lastly, of course, is back to the shift tower, shift cover. Once again, if these plastic inserts have broken, worn off, and it was driven for any period of time, we're going to look for wear on these surfaces here. Make sure we don't have any grooves or major amount of wear on those. If not, we simply snap in new inserts, and down the road motors, you're good to go.
Real quick, if this content is adding value, please let us know by hitting that like button. It does help the channel, and we do greatly appreciate your feedback.
Not normally necessary to take this whole top cover apart unless you were going to replace one of these shift forks. You would clean it accordingly, and then of course make sure that each of the detents feels good as it shifts through each gear. Okay. And I think that's about, oh, we didn't talk about the front bearing retainer. I think we mentioned that before. This is pretty rusted. That's where your throwout bearing rides, so that's got to be a smooth surface to allow the throwout bearing to be free across there, slide easily. This one, we could probably stick it in the lathe, polish it up, see how well it cleans up. The amount of rust, I think we might be better off just replacing it. There is a bearing race or bearing cup in here, and that would be part of your overhaul kit. Yeah, that's about it.
This show is a ton of hours to produce, and we could really use your help. Check out the video description down below to learn more information. In the not so distant future, we're going to be diving into the transfer case that came equipped with this manual transmission. So it goes without saying, be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell too, so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Once again, my name's Robert, and I will see you next time.